Hello guys, welcome to the 1000 subscriber special. Thank you all for 1000 subscribers. Today I'm going to be doing something I don't see many Siren enthusiasts do. I made a Siren tier list. I've looked around and just saw no Siren tier list from any Siren enthusiast. So I did it myself. We got 7 tiers. We have S tier, Godlike Sirens, my favorite Sirens ever. We got A tier, awesome sirens. Not my favorite, but they are really cool. B tier, great sirens. These sirens are great, like it says. I like these sirens. I don't hate any of them here. C tier, good sirens. These are for sirens that I think are good, but I wouldn't put them any higher on any sort of ranking list. D tier, okay sirens. These sirens here are just I mean, they're fine, but I prefer any other siren, really. E tier, honestly boring sirens. These here are sirens I just find pretty boring, and as you can see, I only have 2 spots for this one. And then finally, F tier, bottom of the barrel sirens. These sirens here are deplorable and disgusting. There's little to no redeeming qualities about these 2 sirens on this tier. So usually when I do any sort of ranking list, I go from worst to best, but this time I think I'm going to go best to worst. And I know this is not an actual tier list, this is just a slideshow because when I was thinking about this, I was like, there's just so many sirens here. I wonder if it's just going to work out in an actual tier list. So I just decided to make some slides and call them tiers. It's basically the same thing, but all the sirens are automatically in their groups. But now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, it might have worked out in just normal tier list maker, really. Maybe. But I still stick with Google Slides just to be safe. Because there's a lot of sirens on this list. I'm going to reveal them one by one. And keep this in mind, with each passing siren, the rating decreases. So there'll be one above another and one below and stuff. You know how it works. Okay, let's get into it. Starting off with S tier Godlike Sirens. So my favorite siren of all time is the Thunderbolt 1000T. And yes, I do feel kind of bad for having this as my all-time favorite siren, because this here is probably the most recognizable and most popular siren that was ever made. Just normal, everyday people know what it is. When they recognize it, they're like, oh, it's a siren, it's a siren. And it's very, very, very popular. So I kind of look like an NPC by saying that this here is my all-time favorite siren, but you know, I've always liked this siren, even before I found out there was an entire siren community, so it's not my fault that my favorite siren has to be the most popular one, you know? So the reason why I love this siren so much is not only does it look cool, but I just love the sound. The sound. I don't know how to describe the sound, but it's just one of the creepiest sounding sirens ever. And that's why I love it so much, because it just sounds so cool and so scary. Next on the list is the Thunderbolt 1003. And yes, I know you're probably wondering why this is lower than the Thunderbolt 1000T when it has more tones and stuff. Even though it has more tones and stuff, I just like the design of the 1000T more. Honestly, I did kind of get bored of the high-low and alternative wail signal, because I just heard it so many times back then. There's multiple videos. I've seen all the videos and stuff, but it's still this high because it is a Thunderbolt, a dual tone Thunderbolt, and a dual tone Thunderbolt sound creepy as all hell and cool. Next, we got the 3T22. This is basically the 2T22, but it has dampers. I like the high-low and alternative wail of this siren more than the Thunderbolt. And out of all the sirens I've ever heard, this here probably sounds the most like a war siren. Every time I hear this, I feel like we're going to get bombed or something. And I also love the classic design. It just looks so cool. Next we have the EOWS 612. And the reason why it's one of my favorites is because Federal Signal had a meeting once, and they're like, Let's take an innocent sounding chime from like an elevator or a clock and turn it into a siren. Yes, these the EOWSs and the modulators, the dual tone ones, they just sound like a chime that's being used as a warning siren. Just sounds like one of those chimes you'll hear in an old elevator. And I love it so much, and it just sounds so creepy. I also love the design of it too. Just look at that. It's just gigantic. Just a gigantic box with 6 horns. Next up, we got another EOWS. This here is the EOWS 1212. I like it for the same reasons as the 612. It looks very cool, and it also sounds like a creepy chime. Or, I mean, not creepy, I meant to say a friendly sounding chime that's turned into a siren. The next one is, it really is no different, but the reason why it's lower than the 1212 is because I like the horns of the 1212 more than the 115. Next up, we got the SD10. I really love the design of this. It looks so cool, and it sounds very cool too. Next up, we got the normal 2T22. It's basically the 3T22 but without dampers. It's basically the same siren it's basically the same siren, you can say, but I still just added it. It's two siren models that look the same, just one has a little feature. Next up, we got my favorite Century siren, the 40V2T. This sounds like the THX siren. I mean, it sounds like the THX logo, and it sounds so creepy. Holy shit. Especially when it's doing a attack tone, it just sounds very creepy and eerie. I remember the first time I ever heard this siren was a video of a tornado in Forest, Mississippi. And I remember in the beginning of the video, you can hear a 40V2T somewhere close to the guys who are driving. And I was like, holy hell, that sounds so creepy, but it sounds so cool. Yeah. Eventually, it became one of my favorite sirens. I just love it so much. It's just so cool. And I also love the look of it too. Next up, we got the ACA Cyclone 120. So there's 2 of these. The 120 and the 125. I like the 120 more because it just looks cooler. I also love how it sounds too. It sounds very cool. And I heard it's also very very loud. Next up, we got the Federal Signal 500 DHTT. I like how they're both I like how they're not just one singular rotating siren, it's 2. And I also like how they have different ports too. One of them sounds like a 2001, and the other one, I forgot. I forgot what other model siren that sounds like that. But I like it. It's a really cool siren. Next up, we got the Federal Signal 500 STHH. I love the design of it, and I also like the dual tone versions of this. The dual tones sound very cool. Next up, we have the Wellen WPS 3000. This here's my all-time favorite Wellen siren. So I like how it's basically just a Wellen Vortex, but tall. Very tall. This is the older brother of the Wellen Vortex. And I also love the air horn too. The air horn sounds very cool. It's the best sounding Wellen air horn. And I also like how they don't rotate in one direction. They rotate in both directions. And then at the bottom of S tier, we have the original Thunderbolt 1000. So this here is the single tone version of the 1000T and 1003. And even though I like the dual tone much better than the single tone, I still find the single tone to sound really cool. Moving on to A tier awesome sirens. At the top of A tier, we have the Soundmaster 115. Not only does it sound cool when it goes off, but I also really love the design of it. Just look at it. You see? That's just cool. That's very cool. Next up, we got a similar looking siren, the ACA Super Banshee. I'm pretty sure both the Super Banshee and the Soundmaster 115 sound the same, or similar at least, but I like the design of the Soundmaster more, so that's the reason why it's above the Super Banshee. Just two brothers from a different mother, basically. Next up, we got the other version of the ACA Cyclone, the ACA Cyclone 125. It's basically like the 120, but it's just the 120 is flatter while the 125 is taller, and I prefer the look of the flatter. I prefer the flatter look more than the taller look. But I really love the Cyclone. I love how it sounds like the P50, and I'm pretty sure there's also a few other ACA sirens that sound like it. Next up, we got the ACA P50. I heard this is the second loudest siren as of now, but I might be wrong. I only heard that from one video, but I'm not sure if that guy was right or not. But yes, this siren here is one of the loudest sirens that has ever been made. In America, at least. I don't know about the rest of the world. It looks like a giant trash can that was turned into a siren. It just looks very cool, but I do prefer the Cyclone more to the P50. Next up, we got the Soundmaster 125. It's just like the other Soundmaster, but this here rotates. The only times I've seen videos of it rotating, it was pretty slow. So maybe that's the reason why, or maybe that's one of the reasons why it didn't really sell. But the design of it is what carries it for me. I love the way it looks. It just looks so cool. I remember like back in 2016, I saw a picture of one of these, and I was like, holy moly! It looks so cool. I really liked it, and I was frustrated at how I couldn't find any videos of it. Next up, we got the Horse Super Cyrex, and I call it the single Horse Super Cyrex, because there's two of these that I believe go by the same name. Everywhere on YouTube, both this here and the other one that has two horns that rotate, I believe they're both called the Horror Super Cyrex. So this is just a single version. So the reason why I have this above the dual version is because the ports of this siren, the combination of both ports just sound very creepy. I forgot what ports the siren was, but it's a creepy combination. I also like the look of it too. It looks like something you'll see in Star Wars. Next up, we got the Welland WPS 2900. So there's like multiple versions of this type of Welland, the ones that look like hockey pucks. I know there's some that are called unamis and all this stuff here and there, but this here is for all of them. All of these hockey puck looking sirens, I think they're all cool, and they're all in this place here. Next up, we got the B&N Mobile Directo, the all famous toilet siren, which for some reason siren enthusiasts get offended at that. I don't know why. This here is higher than the alerter because it just looks cooler. And the tone, the sound of it just sounds cooler too. Kind of reminds me of a 2T22. Up next, we got the ACA Alerter, the son of the Mobile Directo. Just below the Mobile Directo because I think the Mobile Directo looks cooler and sounds cooler, and the ACA Alerter sounds like a bunch of other sirens I've heard before. Next up, we got the ACA Hurricane 130. This is basically the ACA version of the Thunderbolt because it also has a blower, and it also looks kind of like a Thunderbolt 2 with the big horn that just narrows down. It's a cool siren, and it also has a very fast wind up. Like, oh my. It's a shame that there's like only one of these left, I believe. One left in Milwaukee County, a very horrible county that just refuses to test their sirens. I believe it's the final one in service. I believe all the others have been removed and replaced all around the world. Next up, I got the EOWS 812. This here is a 612, but with two more horns, and it's very massive. The reason why it's lower than the other EOWS sirens is because they all sound the same, and this one just has two extra horns on it. And I do say it is kinda overrated too. It's just a 612 with two extra horns. I know it looks cool, but it is just a 612 with two extra horns. Alright, below the 812, we got the EOWS 408. This here has 4 horns. And this one might be even more. I don't know, is this one even more rare than the 812? Or is the 812 more rare? I'm not too sure. This here's another one that I kind of find a little overrated. Because, it's just an EOWS siren and they all sound the same. But it is still a pretty cool siren. I like how it only has 4 horns. Okay, next up is a controversial one. I believe there's a lot of siren enthusiasts who hate this siren, I believe. I don't know. But I actually really love it. This here is the Federal Signal Model 2. This here is in between a mini siren and a full-size warning siren. The reason why I like it a lot is because of the design. Other than that, the sound of it just sounds like I don't know, just a basic single tone siren. But I really do like it because I like how it's small and the design of it just looks cool. Next up we got the dual Hor Super Cyrex. This here is the other siren that I was talking about that has 2 horns, or I mean it's basically 2 sirens that rotate. But I like the Federal Signal 500 version more than this one. Next up we got the Sentry Defender. I believe this here is the only rotating siren they've ever made, as all the other ones are omnidirectional. I love how big and bulky it looks. I also like how they rotate too. Every single video I've seen of these, when they rotate, it looks like they're lagging out. And I know that's not intended, but I do think it does look cool when it does that, even if it's not intended. Next up, we got the Sentry 10V2T. This siren here looks really, really cool. And it's also dual tone. I'm a fan of the dual tone Sentry sirens. I like how some of the horns are big and some of them are small. It just looks so cool. And like I did say, it is dual tone. And it has a very good dual tone sound to it as well. Next up, we got the ACA Screamer. This sounds like a basic ACA siren, but the reason why it's up here in A tier is because I really like the design of it. It looks very cool. Just 2 hoods over the chopper. Next up, we got the Decot Red Arrow. This siren here sounds very, very cool. And it also has a unique design too. And I also like how you can just see the motor too. No housing around it, just the motor. Next up is the Sentry 10V. This here sounds like a normal Sentry siren, just a single tone Sentry siren, but I really like the look of this. It's the same reason why I really like the 10V2T. It's because some of the horns look big and the others are small. It makes it look very cool. Next up we got the Sterling N10. I like how the horns look like vents, and it also sounds very cool. And just the whole design of the siren just looks very awesome. It's definitely one of the coolest dual sirens out there. Next up, we got the Edie Bullard Co siren. I don't know much about this. I only know this siren because of a news report of a fellow siren enthusiast who knew that this siren was up on this building, and he wanted to hear it go off because it's an active, and it's like the last of its kind, I believe. And when it went off, I just it just sounds like a 2001 kind of. The reason why it's this high is because it just looks very cool, but it's still at the bottom of A tier. Moving on to B tier, Great Sirens. At the top of B tier, we have the Sentry 15V2T. All the horns here are the same size, but the reason why it's the highest in this tier is because it's dual tone, and like I said, I really like dual tone sentries. Next up, we got the Sentry 16V 1TB. It's basically the 15V2T but single tone. But I really like the design of it. I also love how far the sound carries. Believe it or not, there's a small town right next to my city called Doolittle. And in Doolittle, there's 2 Sentry 16 V1Ts. And when they go off, you can hear them all the way to my house, which is a few miles away from Doolittle. I mean, not that many miles, but still. I don't know of any other Sentry Siren around me, so that's like the closest one to my house. So yeah, the sound really carries. Next up, I got the Welland Vortex. Back then, I used to put this in. This used to be one of my favorites, but over time it kind of died down on me. It looks cool, but I think its whale tone along with a specific tone. Its whale tone and its normal single tone kind of sounds boring. One of the lower tones, like you would hear in Oklahoma or something, like more Oklahoma. If you know, you know. The higher tones, the higher single tones sound boring, but the lower single tones, they sound pretty cool. The lower pitched single tones. Next up, we got the Sentry 7V8. Sounds like a basic Sentry siren, and it's like the 10V, but all the horns are the same size. Though there are some 7V8s out there that have bigger horns, or I mean longer horns than this in the picture. But still, I like the combination of big and small horns more than just one or the two, just by it themselves. Next up, we got the Sentry 10V1T. It looks like the 15V2T, but with smaller horns. And it also sounds like a basic Sentry Siren too. Next up, we got the ACA Banshee. I really love saying that, the Banshee. This here is another single tone siren, which I'm not the biggest fan of compared to the dual tones, or even triple tone sirens. But I really like the look of this here. It looks like it has a cowboy hat on it. It sounds like a basic ACA siren, but the design of it. Sorry for some of the stuttering. The design looks very cool to me. We got the Sentry Vive, the 5V below. Just like a lot of other Sentry Sirens, this here sounds like a basic normal Sentry Siren. And it's also single tone too. But I like the big hood under the chopper. I mean, above the chopper. But I do prefer the horns more than the hoods. All right, this might be another controversial one, but the Chrysler Air Raid Siren, one of the loudest. I think this is the loudest siren. I don't know. I'm really not too sure what the loudest ever siren is, but this here is definitely one of them, and it's one of the biggest ones too. But you're probably like foaming at. You're probably going to pick up your torches and pitchforks because I have it in B tier. This is basically just a gigantic single tone siren, but I still like it, but I prefer all the other sirens above it more than this here, honestly. Next up, we got the modulator. So the single tone modulators sound boring, honestly. I'm not a big fan of the single tones, but the dual tones, they sound like a EOWS siren, and they really sound creepy. It's the whole chime thing all over again. Just sounds like just a friendly sounding chime turned into a warning siren. They do sound very creepy when they go off. If they're dual tone. They don't sound as creepy if they're single tone. I also like the look of the siren too. It looks like a stack of Mentos. Definitely one of the more unique looking sirens on this list. Okay, next up we got the Sentry 3V8. It just looks like the 5V, but the hood is smaller, and I prefer the longer hoods than the smaller ones. Next up we got the Darley Model 7TT. I like how it looks like a Model 5, a Federal Signal Model 5 or 7, but curved. Next up, we got the Federal Signal 508128. This here is the buffed up version of the 2001, basically. I love how big it is, and the sound of it is okay. It's just another single tone siren, but I really like the way it looks. Next up, I got the Federal Signal STL10. So not only does it look cool, but I also like the lower sounding pitch or tone, lower sounding tone, pitch, whatever. And even though it does kind of sound like a sick siren, like a sick messed up siren, I still like it, especially when you hear it from a distance. Like when you hear it from a distance, it sounds creepy as all hell. Next up, we got the Federal Signal Thunderbeam RSH10. This here is a very, very unique siren. I don't know if there's any other siren like this. This is basically an omnidirectional siren trying to be a rotating siren. It's a single tone siren that relies on a reflector to reflect the sound when it spins around. I heard it's not really that effective, but I really love how fast the reflector spins. Almost every single video I've seen of the Thunderbeam, the reflector spins so fast, like crazy fast. And it's just a very unique siren. Next up, we got the Darley Champion. This is Darley's version. This is another Darley version of some model siren from Federal Signal or some other company, because there's lots and lots of model sirens out there. I really like the look of this, but the sound of it just sounds like a basic single tone model siren that you'll hear from Federal Signal or something. Next up, I got the ASC T121. Okay, two words: big horns. This here is just another single tone siren, but I like the big horns on it. It makes the siren look very cool. This here might be another controversial one, but the Fedo Code Model 20 at the bottom of B tier. Big LT, you must be crazy. I really, really like the look of this. It has a very cool looking design, but the sound itself kind of sounds like a 2001 siren, since it is a high-pitched single-tone siren. But this here is definitely one of the cooler looking model sirens. Moving on to C tier. At the top of C tier, we have the Welland Hornet. This here is another rotating Welland siren that rotates in both directions. And it looks cool when it rotates, because the horn is not sticking out like most sirens. The horn is straight in the middle, and it sounds like a basic Welland as well. And usually when I see videos of the Welland Hornet, they have the high-pitched single tones. They're high-pitched and single tone, which I kind of find boring. But it looks cool, and it also looks cool when it rotates. Next up, we got the original 2001. The 2001 DC SRN Generation 1. This here is the one with the round back, and it sounds like a basic 2001 siren as well, but it's lower pitched. Next up, I got the Federal Signal DC SRN Gen 2. This here is basically the Gen 1, but it has a square back opposed to a round back. And I forgot to mention both sirens use a Thunderbolt rotator. Sounds like a basic 2001 siren, but just a bit lower pitched. Next up, I got the Federal Signal DSA. So this here is basically just a modulator, as it has the same tones. It has the single tones and the dual tones. And the single tone modulators I find boring, but the dual tone ones, they're pretty cool, you know? They sound very creepy, just a very creepy chime. And I like it, but I like the look of the modulator more than the DSA. Next up, we got the STH10. The siren looks pretty cool, but it's this low because it kind of sounds like a 2001 siren, which I find boring. But I really, really like the design of it, so it's not in honestly boring tier. It sounds like a basic ACA siren, which I like, but the design of it, I just never really liked it, honestly. It's okay to me. Next up, I got the ACA P15, which looks like the P10, but it sounds different because it has a different port. Which honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the P15 should be higher than the P10, but I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to change it right now, but just remember, I just changed my mind. The P15 is better than the P10 because I like the sound of it more. Next up, we got the Federal Signal Model 5, and I guess the Model 7 too, which is below. Both sirens look the same, and when they both go off, they do sound like 2001s, unless if they're dual tone. If they're dual tone, they sound much cooler in my opinion. But if they're single tone, they sound like your basic 2001 siren. Alright, so this here is going to definitely be very controversial, but I got the CLM siren below all these other sirens here in C tier. The reason why is because for a long time, everybody was hyping this siren up. saying that it was like super duper rare and that there was no videos of it at all. And then finally, years later, when I finally got to hear what it sounded like, it just sounds like a 2T22. A 2T22 that rotates. I like the design of it. It reminds me of the Alerter and the Mobile Directo. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of disappointing to find out that it just sounds like the 2T, 3T22. Next up, we got the CTI SMR15, which is, I believe, is now extinct. I believe there was like only one that was located somewhere in Oklahoma. It was the only one in the world, I believe, that was operational. But it had a broken rotator. Eventually, it was replaced by a 508, a Federal Signal 508. I really like the look of this siren. It looks pretty cool, but it sounds just like a 2001 siren, but just a bit lower pitch. It really does sound like a 2001 siren. I mean, it is a shame how it's no longer here. I don't like that was the one in Oklahoma was like the last one that was operational. So it's a shame that it's now gone. Hopefully, it's in the hands of a siren collector. Next up, we got the Welland 2000R. This here is another rare siren that is praised among the community, but I don't know. I mean, it's a cool siren, but I don't know. It's not one of my favorite Wellands, and I prefer the more common Wellands because they look cooler. Next up, we got the Darley STH10. This here sounds like a basic single tone siren, but I really like the look of it. It's bulky and fat with some tiny horns in the middle of it. That's pretty cool. Alright, here's a siren that I didn't even know existed. Yes, I might sound dumb, but I really had no idea that there was a Federal Signal Model 3. So when I watched the videos of it, it just sounds like a normal model siren, and it also looks like a normal model siren too. Not too impressive, but I mean, it's fine. Next up, we got the Federal Signal Eclipse 8. This here is basically the omnidirectional version of the 508 because they have the same port, I believe. I like how the horns are square. But all my life, I just thought this siren was just a good siren, but it's just not one of my favorites. I wouldn't put it any tier higher than it is now. The same thing for the ASC T128. This has never been one of my favorite sirens. It was always there for me, and it was just I mean it was just there, and I it does look cool, but it just kind of sounds like a basic siren, just a basic single tone siren. So I think C tier is a good tier for this siren, in my opinion. Next up, we got the Hor Cyro drone. I believe there's only one of these as well. I think because every time I look up videos of this siren, I only find the one that's in in Ohio, and the one that has the cover that rotates because of vibration. Imagine if that was actually a feature, just a rotating dome. That would be pretty cool, but it's sadly not a feature. Next up, we got the Federal Signal Equinox. This here is basically a 2001 siren, but it sounds like a 508 and a Eclipse. I believe these only exist because of power plant regulations, which I do think the siren is cool. It's just I don't think it should. I don't think it deserves any higher tier than what it is on now. And I'm not the biggest fan of the more modern looking the one the I'm not a fan of the 130 design. I don't like the tall backs. Next up, we got the ACA Performance Plus Banshee. This is definitely not as cool as the original Banshee, and it's just another single tone siren. This here is the Darley Model 3, which is just another single tone model siren. But I do like the curves on the hoods. Next up, we got the ACA Quadrin. I believe I pronounced that right. This here looks like a modulator, but I like the modulator more because at least that has a wind up. This here, it also has a wind up, but it has a silent wind up, which I've never been a fan of. And I've also only heard single tone versions of this. Next up is the ASC iForce. And I think I might have realized I probably said ACA Quadrant instead of ASC Quadrant. So if I accidentally said ACA Quadrant, I meant to say ASC Quadrant. So just like the Quadrant, it sounds the same. It also has the silent wind up, and it's also single tone. But I do know that you are able to put the Ultra Voice controller on this siren, so when you do that, you basically get the modulator. So that means that it can also have dual tone attack and alert and wail and stuff, But it's not going to save it from being at the bottom of C tier. Moving on to D tier, OK Siren. We got the ACA PN20 at the top of the list, at the top of D tier. It's a single tone siren that looks like the P10 and P15. This siren is okay, but I prefer the P10 and P15 more than this. Next up, we got the Loudon. It's pronounced Loudon. The Loudon ES5000 DC. This would have went in E tier if it wasn't for the design. I think I like the design of it, but I heard quality wise it's bad, I guess. So I'm not going to put it any higher. But it does look cool. Next up, we got the ACA Penetrator Performance Plus. This here just looks like the ACA Howler, but I like the way it sounds more than the Howler. It just sounds cooler. But it looks like the Howler, which I'm not the biggest fan of the Howler, honestly. Next up, we got the ASC Alertronic 6000. I've never really cared for this siren. I'm pretty sure this here is another siren that does the silent wind up. So yeah, it's okay, but I don't really care for the siren. Okay, this here is probably going to be controversial, not because of the popular beloved siren, but because it's hated, and it should be in the bottom of the barrel tier. But the reason why it's not in bottom of the barrel, even though it sounds boring, because it's single tone, I just love the design of it. Look at this. Look at the design of it. It just looks cool. So for now, it's an okay tier. I don't think I can put it any higher because that's just going to be controversial. And then below it, we have the ATI HPSS 32R, which is like the 16R, but it has two more horns. I prefer the look of the two horns instead of four horns. Both of them sound very, very boring in my opinion. They're just single tone, and that's it. Next up, we got the Federal Signal 2001 SRNB, which I think I forgot to add the DC Gen 3, which looks kind of like the 2001 SRNB. This and the SRN you can say are in the same place. They're okay. I do like the smaller backs to them instead of the taller backs that the 2001 130s have. But these sirens are everywhere, and they do get kind of boring. But they're okay. These here at least, because the backs are not tall. Okay, next up we got the Federal Signal Model A, and basically this goes for all mini sirens. I don't hate them. I think they're okay, but they're not really my cup of tea, honestly. So you can say this here is for every single mini siren, and not just for the Model A. They're okay, but I wouldn't put them any higher. Next up, we got the ACA Electronic AL4000. Most of the videos I've seen of this, it does high-low, and the high-low sounds okay, but at least it doesn't sound boring. The look of it is okay, and like I said, the high-low is okay as well, but I wouldn't put it any higher. Next up, we got the ACA Electronic AL7200. Even though I do like the design of this siren more than the 4000, it just every video I see of this siren, it just single tone. I think it also has the silent wind up. And at the bottom of D tier, we have the ASC AL6000. Um, to my knowledge, there's only one video of this on YouTube, And I don't think it doesn't have any wind up or wind down, I believe, which I'm not a fan of. And it's also single tone, so it's just very boring. But I do like the look of it. It looks cool, but still, I'm not a big fan of the single tone sirens that have no wind up or wind down. Now on to E tier. Honestly, boring sirens. There's only 2 sirens for this tier. Alright, here's another controversial one, but we got the ACA Howler. I remember back in the day, every siren enthusiast was drooling. They're like, oh my god, they're like, oh, it's such a rare siren, such a rare special gem of a siren. So I was excited to see it. And then when I saw it, I was disappointed beyond belief, honestly. Not only does it look like the P10, the P15, and the PN20, I believe. Not only does it look like all those sirens, but it also sounds like a basic ACA siren. Yeah, it was pretty disappointing, honestly. I do hate to say it, but yeah, it's just kind of just disappointing. Okay, next up we have the Federal Signal 2001 130. This siren is everywhere, and it also has the tall back, which I'm not a fan of. Most of the time when a siren gets replaced, this siren here is the replacement. So, yeah, not the biggest fan of this siren. It's just boring. Yeah, just pretty boring. Okay, F tier, bottom of the barrel sirens. These are sirens that have little to no redeeming qualities. At the top of F tier, we have the ATI HPSS, to nobody's surprise. Every single video I see of this siren, it either does a silent wind up or no wind up at all. They're all single tone, and some of them also have sound clips of different sirens, like the 3T, like the 2T, 3T22. One sounded like a Welland, and so on. The only redeeming quality that this siren has is that it looks cool, which it's sad because it looks cool, but it's such a crappy siren, and it's also a poorly made siren too. There's one more thing I do like about this siren though. Sometimes the horns will just be facing just random directions here and there, and the siren just look like a big mess, which I think looks cool. They don't look all straight and perfect like the one in the picture. Some of them just look like a mess. But still, the sound, just it sounds so boring. It's so boring. Holy hell. And now, for the bottom of F tier, along with the bottom of this entire tier list, we have the LRAD DS60XL. You're probably wondering what this siren is. This here is basically a speaker. You can barely call this a siren. All the videos I've seen of this, it just does a voice. Like it says, this is only a test. It does the voice, and it does a just a single attack tone with no wind up and no wind down. And then sometimes it also just has a sound clip of another siren. So and sometimes it just does the voice and only the voice. Yeah, it's just. Oh, and the siren also looks boring too. This is just a really horrible siren. Complete bottom of the barrel siren. Holy hell. This is my new least favorite siren. At least the ATI HPSS has one redeeming quality. But yeah, you can barely call this a siren. Yeah, like I said, it mostly just does the voice with a short alert with no wind up and no wind down, or it just has a sound clip from a different siren altogether. And that is it for the siren tier list. Hopefully you didn't mind some of my stuttering. And like that, see you guys later, and bye!